So, I'm going to go over the questions that I assigned for homework. I didn't finish all of them. I was supposed to at lunch today, and it didn't happen. So we're going to take the ones that I have done, and then we'll take the rest from you. So take a look at what I've got. Some of them were you need to come up with your own analogy. I made an analogy for you, or you need to come up with your own explanation of things. And so obviously I didn't do those ones. But here is from the beginnings of the practice questions. I'll ask you to describe the relationship between these four things. Here it is. Gene is a section of DNA. DNA is found as chromatin. Chromatin condenses to a chromosome. I mean, as long as you had something that sounds like that, that is the relationship between those four things. They are all subsequent smaller pieces of the next thing. And just being able to identify the language there together is important. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Here are my answers to this page. They wanted you to order them from smallest to biggest. So unless I screwed up, the order should go smallest being in the nucleotide, then the gene, then the chromosome, then all of your DNA, then the nucleus, then the cell. I'm pretty sure I got all the pieces. If you see a mistake, Kaylee, please say something. It can be other people, but it seems like it's always Kaylee. And then where does the DNA replication take place? It takes place in the nucleus. When does the DNA replication take place? It takes place during interphase. Mitosis is the splitting of the cell. The DNA has already been copied at that point. Is one of the things you should have learned in grade 9. Interphase is when the copying happens. And then number 4, assume the sequence of bases in one strand of DNA molecule is GAC, TTA, CG, TACC. If I did it properly, it should be CTG, AA, TGC, ATGG. And the result of DNA replication is 2 copies that are identical, or they should be identical to each other. Comments, questions, concerns? Going once, twice, thrice, yes. Who says wait, wait, wait? Sarah says wait, wait, wait. Okay. Mahib. I love your enthusiasm. Keep it on point. Okay, Sarah, we good? Okay. And then there was an analogy there. Consider the following analogy. The genetic code, the set of instructions that determines all the traits of an organism, may be compared to a book. Still using this analogy, which of the following could each be compared to? The chapters in the book could be compared to what? If the genetic code is the book, the chapters, bigger than that, perhaps. And this is DNA replication still, not protein synthesis. Well, if the whole book is if all of the book is your whole DNA, then the chapters would be what? Well, what are the individual, chapters are, for those, maybe we haven't read in a while. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. I'm at least sort of here for now. That's unfortunate. Okay, so, I know for some of us it's been a long time since we read a book. A chapter of a book is a number of pages that is a subsection of the larger book. So what would be an example of if the entire book is all of your DNA, then a large subset of that keep going, start throwing out words and I'll tell you when I hear the right one. There it is. This is the role of the chromosome. Your DNA is broken up into 46 chromosomes. Your entire genetic code is those 46 chromosomes. Unless you've got a deletion issue or a bonus chromosome that you shouldn't have, You trust me, you at this point in your guys' life, if you did, you would know. So that none of you know means you don't have extra or missing DNA. The chapters in the book, the analogy there is that that's a chromosome. So then the sentences of the book would be what? What's an example of what that could be? Now we've got, yes, Olivia. Yeah, you bet. Individual genes. Chapters broken up into sentences. Those sentences describe specific things. Calling the sentences in the book your individual genes makes a lot of sense. And then the letters in the book, not even the words. We're going down to the letter level. The letter, yes, Kaylee? You betcha. So RNA, the example I gave you is RNA would be a note form copy of a section of the book. That was the distinction I was trying to make, Evelyn, with my example yesterday, was RNA is a copy of a chunk. So the original chunk confuses you more. I apologize if it confuses you more. Because you're not as quiet as you think you are? The problem with analogies is that analogies do always break down somewhere. Like there's no analogy is perfect. But what it's getting you to look at, and this is specifically DNA replication. So it's looking at it the lens of, okay, this is DNA. A chapter of a book is just a large section of the book. A large section of DNA is a chromosome. So that's what the connection is trying to get you to make. Well, it's a sentence. A sentence is a complete idea found within the chapter of a book. A complete idea found within your genetic code. We call those genes. And then the letters make up the words. We could even break it down and say, okay, what do the words mean in the sentence? We could go that far, but now we're constructing the words themselves, the individual piece of the letters. This is what the idea of the question was getting at. And if that makes it worse for you, let's ignore the analogies then, I guess. But it's important to understand what these chunks, how the chunks are related to each other. I know Campanella probably doesn't help at all. Say what? It's trying to... Well, then why didn't we talk it through? And there were none of them. Did you do that on your own, or did you do it discussing it with the people at your table, or all of you, and you all got stuck the same way? Okay. Well, the next step, if as a table group you're getting, I mean, Olivia, did you ask Olivia? I feel like you should include your whole table next time, because the four of you are like, oh, this sucks, and Olivia's like, I had the right answers. Okay. You can always invoke other tables. You can always pull me over, but if you're hung up, ask someone outside your table group. Okay, here's question 7. This is where protein synthesis starts. What are these molecules? X, Y, and Z are DNA, RNA, and a protein. The function of DNA is to hold your genetic code. The function of Y is to hold the code for a protein. And the function of Z, it has many functions. Z is a protein. It has as many functions as there are different jobs in your body. Which I know you're looking for, but I want the answer. Unfortunately, that is the answer. The function of the protein is to go out into your body and to do a specific job. What job? There are hundreds. I know that probably doesn't help. Which is why we're going over these questions and not just giving you a test or a quiz. And then how are genes involved in the production of a protein? What did you guys say for this? Yeah. Or specific proteins, plural. It could be a gene could code for multiple proteins. Yes. Yes. A gene is a piece. So for those of you who didn't hear what Brooklyn said, a gene is a piece of A gene is a piece of DNA that holds the code for a particular protein, or you can generalize it further, a group of proteins. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, you're basically saying the same thing. You betcha. Okay, cool. Then the matching and multiple choice begins, and this is where I didn't do any of it. So we're going to do science by democracy, which is a horrific way to do science. Just saying. If all of a sudden you're like, how do we feel about science? And then we start answering things based on our own opinions and taking the majority, that's not how we do science. So here we go. Let's figure this out. A nucleotide is what letter? A, the building block of a protein. A nucleic acid is C, large molecules made up of repeating nucleotides. A nitrogenous base is which one? D, the component that makes the steps. And complementary bases means we have to have that B. Adenine and thymine, that is correct. Comments, questions, concerns? Okay, cool. Question 5, answer is? You bet. Double-stranded nucleic acid. Question 6, which of the following correctly identifies DNA and RNA? Yes. I couldn't find the problem with C, but I found the problem with C. Riboamino, no, it's not a thing. Which of the following are the basic building blocks of DNA and RNA? A, nucleotides. Which of the following are the nitrogenous bases in DNA? D, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Love it. Flip the page when you're ready. Number 9, the answer is? How do you know that it's the sugar? By memorize. This is the problem everyone hates about biology. Not everyone. Some people love biology, and that's great. But with what Emmanuel said before, I'd love to be able to memorize better. Wouldn't we all? It is just a straight memorization and comparing these two with each other. This is what I gave you in your notes. That's the question. Phosphate, sugar, nitrogenous base. That's it. And specifically, that nitrogenous base is either, you could get more specific here. Which nitrogenous base does this have to be? Number 3 here, or Roman numeral letter 3. Not only is that a nitrogenous base, that's which nitrogenous base? Here are the structures of the nitrogenous bases. It could be guanine or it could be adenine. Beyond that, we don't know which one, but it's one of these two. You know, it can't be cytosine or thymine because of the circular. The adenine and guanine have 2 rings. Call them purines, or were they the pyrimidines? No, the purines. And the 1 ring are the pyrimidines. But I'm not going to make you memorize that. Number 10. What components make up the sides of the DNA molecule? The sides of the DNA molecule? A. These are the sides. This is the thing that connects as the rung. So 1 and 2. What component of the molecule takes part in complementary base pairing? That would be structure C, which I already drew. Which of the following describes how DNA and RNA are similar? That is true. That is true. I would say C. RNA does not have genes, plural. RNA is the code for a specific chunk of gene, or a specific gene. Okay. Stop me if you need to. 13. Complementary bases are? Letter A. Cytosine and guanine would be the only correct example there. Guanine and cytosine are held together by what type of bond? Yes, Brooklyn. Yes. By memorizing this picture. So the sugar phosphate is the backbone here. And it's all of the nitrogenous bases that exist in the middle between those two backbones. It's this picture. Memorizing and understanding that picture is how you do question 10. This is why I did not go into biology as my field of study. I like biology. I like living things and animals, and who doesn't want to make the first thing almost every kid you talk to at some point, I want to be a zookeeper, I want to be a biologist, I wanted to be a marine biologist. It comes up at some age for most kids. I want to be a vet, I want to work with animals. But then you're like, oh crap, I have so many things to memorize. And that doesn't scare some of you away, but it scared me away. So much of biology is memorizing and then being able to consolidate that information. Biology is a lot harder than you might think. Okay, speaking of which, let's memorize this fun fact. Guanine and cytosine are held together by what type of bond? All complementary bases are held together by hydrogen bonds, letter D. And I did briefly explain what those were back when we did the exothermic endothermic making ice cream lab. But again, hydrogen bonds in greater detail will be discussed in, honestly, it's not much more detail than I gave you. But it'll be a formal part of what you do in Chem 11. There's a bunch of different kinds of bonding. Hydrogen is one of them. Number 15, if the sequence of bases in one strand of DNA molecule is TAG, TCA, what is the sequence? It's going to be, you say E? E's not an option. It's going to be B. Oh, you said it like Justin Timberlake did in that one song. Instead of it's going to be me, it's going to be B. Yeah, it's going to be B. Really nasally, love it. Okay, 16. Organisms inherit their genetic information from their what? Yes. If you said anything other than C, I have been doing so many things wrong over the last week. Number 17, what is the genetic information stored in, where is the genetic information stored in DNA? The answer is B. It's the order of those nitrogenous bases. That's it. Cool, flip the page. Oh, we have so much more to do. 18, which of the following correctly identifies the form in which the DNA exists during the different parts of the cell cycle? Yes, it is in fact C. I don't know why I doubted you, because I gave you that answer yesterday in class. Number 19, how many pairs of chromosomes are in a human somatic cell or a body cell? There are 23 pairs for 46 total. Just because that back table wants to answer doesn't mean that all of you can't answer too. I know you have a voice, Sarah. Number 20, in a genetic male, the XY chromosomes are known as D, sex chromosomes. Number 21, what are the sections of DNA that provide instructions for an amino acid sequence are called? G is not an option. Genes, letter A. Yes, I was looking for a letter. Yes, Kaylee, you are correct. The answer is A, genes. Number 22, how are the chromosomes arranged in a karyotype? Oh, we didn't answer this one. That's a really good question. I did not give you this answer, but let's look at the picture. You tell me how they're arranged. There's the karyotype. Look what happens as you go up the numbers. They get shorter. The answer is, in length, from longest to shortest, letter B. When in doubt, go look at a karyotype. That's a power move right there. Go look at the thing it's asking you about. 23, what process makes a duplicate copy of DNA during interphase? A, replication. Protein synthesis uses transcription and translation. It's not asking about protein synthesis, it's asking about duplicating DNA. Do not overthink the question. That is the second worst part of biology. Overthinking the question. And then 24, the variety and abundance of salamanders in a forest is an example of, we're looking for an example of diversity. Genetic diversity. This is, what do you mean how? Salamanders are salamanders. It didn't specify that there was different kinds of salamanders. You're overthinking it again. Okay, so how if I read, let's change the question. The variety and abundance of students in a classroom is an example of a population, genetic diversity, species diversity, or ecosystem diversity. The variety is the key word there. As soon as you see the word variety, you're looking for something that includes diversity. And if instead of salamanders, I said students, you aren't different species of humans just because you look different. No, you are genetic is what I'm arguing. There's genetic diversity, not species diversity. Yes, but you are all still members of the same species. We're not going to take all of our Indian students and say, okay, cool, you are a new species, we're going to call you, and then the German students and the Spanish students, and we're not going to break you up by race and call you different species. You're all one species, you're all humans. But where you come from has had an impact on your genetic diversity, as is identified by the blonde over there, and the brunettes over here, and the redhead over here, and all of these different, for example, looking at hair color, all the black hair on that whole half of the classroom. So, genetic diversity. Speaking of genetic diversity, I'd like you to flip to this page. Heredity, genetic activities, or genetics activity. Here's what I'd like you to do. To start our conversation, Mahip, you going swimming? Yep. You have such a good time, man. Okay, so as we are about to launch into the whole discussion now on heredity. We talked about how genetic code gets passed down from parents down on to their offspring. Then those offspring might become parents on their own right, have offspring there. To start this process, I'm going to give you a list of traits here. And there is talk here on language I have not taught you yet. Ideas of dominance and recessiveness, which we're going to talk about in more detail in the next coming days. And things like phenotype. What? We haven't talked about phenotype. That's okay. I'm going to explain them briefly here. We're going to go through this, and then we're going to start talking about plants. So there are a bunch of traits that can be tied directly to your parentage. Obvious traits that your body is either will demonstrate or will not, depending on the genetic makeup in you. So there are 9 of them. I'll talk about all 9. The tongue roll, the earlobes, the ear bump, the widow's peak, the hitchhiker's thumb, something called polydactylism, syndactylism, a cleft chin, and a hair whorl. Whorl, not a whirl, a whorl. It's O, not I.
Is the hitchhiker's thumb like this?
You betcha.
Yeah.
So keep this out. I am going to show you examples of what this looks like. No, I'm moving over to my computer. Okay, so the tongue roll. Okay, hold on. No, we'll get there. Stop showing each other your fingers. Okay. So the first one. Hands up if you can do this. Actually, you know what? No, I don't want hands up. I want tongues out. If you can do this. Do I have any of you weird people who can do the W? I've seen some W's. Can anyone do a W with your tongue? Like a literal W. You can bend it, yeah, like that. Like weird. I love it. So here's what, if you take a look at your paper, it says, can you roll your tongue into a U shape like a taco shell? If so, you are dominant for this trait. It means there is a code within your genetics that overrides those of us who cannot. If you cannot roll your tongue into a U shape, you are recessive for this trait. So based on whether you can or can't, I want you to answer that question. Are you dominant or recessive? Yeah. Ignore this second column. Ignore the second column. Just tell me if you're dominant or recessive. Can you do or can you not do? Okay, cool. Here's the next one, earlobes. I'm going to pull this back over. Okay, here's the next one. No, it's this one. So, and I will come, if you're not sure what your earlobes do, I'm happy to come around and tell you. Either your earlobes are attached, mine are, or you have free earlobes. You have a lower lobe that comes back up like that. No, yours are attached. Oh, yours are free. Jedediah has free earlobes. Matthew has attached earlobes, as do I. Yours are attached. Stop playing with them for a second. Yours are free. Oh, we've got another fantastic pair of examples right here. I would say that yours are free too. I would say that yours are as well. So who's the attached one? Kaylee was the only attached one? Stop playing with them. Yours is attached. It comes like, if you look at some of us that have one, it goes kind of straight over the bottom, something like that. But if you look at, who's the good example? Yeah, like, if you look at this Brooklyn, or someone in this table closer over here, yeah, unattached. There you go. So, and then read the description there. It says, here, a person who has earlobes attached directly to the side of their head is recessive for this trait. So if yours attach directly, you are recessive. You'd write down that you are recessive in that box there. We'll talk about genotypes in a second. We'll talk about that in a second. Ignore the second box. I don't know. What, are yours attached or not? Okay, so it says here, a person whose earlobes attach directly to the side of their head is recessive. Okay, next one. I have not explained what it means to be recessive or dominant. Just write down what you are. It's not good or bad, like it's not a thing. Yeah, I'll talk about the ear bump. Next one. Okay. The Darwin's ear bump. I don't know why it's called that, but it is. Some people have this, some people do not. It's located up here. You may or may not have a small bump. Either you have it or you don't. Yeah, you totally do it right there. This is your other side. Well, this here looks like you. The other one maybe not. Yeah, do you have it on both?
Bro.
What? The thing is, lots of you guys look like you have it on one side but not the other.
I guess it's the other.
Look at each other, examine each other's ears. I don't think you do. But I do. So if you, let's say if you have it on either one, we'll say yes. What, are we looking at Tony's ears? See your other ears? It's really hard to tell. I feel like Matthew. This one's a hard one. Sometimes, like some people have it really obvious, like that bump there. But for some people, they don't. Like in some of you guys, it looks like you have it on one ear and not the other. The grand scheme, if you're unsure that you think you might on one ear, then let's say you do. And we would say, okay, if you are lacking the bump, you are recessive. If you have the bump, it is a dominant trait. Okay, next one. Where is my mouse? Come back here, mouse. Okay. The widow's peak. Hands up if you know what this is already. Okay, some of you know this already. Yeah, if it is your hair, make the McDonald's logo. For some people, it's more aggressive than on other people's. It's not a cowlick, it's like this. So on some people, it's really, really obvious. Either your hair goes straight across, or it comes down to a point and then goes back. So to really figure this out, what you're going to have to do is you have to pull your hair back. Look at each other. Yours goes straight across. It's this, it's right here. Your hair goes straight across the middle. So you do not have a widow's peak. You have to pull your hair out. You tell me what hair is. Oh, here's a great example of a widow's peak. This right here. So those of you with long hair, regardless of whether you're guys with long hair, you'll have to pull your hair back and look. Yours. Ooh. It's not embarrassing. Let's see. Pull your hair back. No, you got the same thing, Massey. Yours was straight across. Okay, so I'm not going to call you out in front unless you call me over to call you out. I'm not gonna, but figure it out. Do you have this straight or not? Talk to the people at your table. Put your hair back a little bit. Drop back down. Do you have the trait or not? It looks like you could be there. I don't actually even remember if I have it or not. I feel like I do. Oh, AdAware has blocked 185,000 ads. Thank you so much. I don't care right now. Absolutely not. Okay, there's your widow's peak. If you have a widow's peak, it is dominant. If you do not, it's recessive. Okay, this is the one that you guys were demonstrating before, the hitchhiker's thumb. Okay, the hitchhiker's thumb is kind of creepy looking. Okay, it tells you in the box which one to write. It says, if you have the trait, you're this. If you don't have the trait, you're this. Here's the hitchhiker's thumb. This is a really good example. Sarah's got the creepy thumbs? Yes, Sarah's got the creepy thumbs. You got hitchhikers everything. Okay. I do not. This is what it looks like to not have that. This is as far back as my thumb's going. Some of you, just the thumb. Just show us the thumbs. Hold it up high for the world to see. My thumb cannot do it there. Yeah, Jedediah, same thing. It's obvious. You have it, you don't. Yes. What do you mean? Ooh, fascinating. Make a note of that. That's weird.
Let's do dog more excessive.
Make a note. You've got it on one side, but not the other. That's interesting. Okay. Make a note. Either you're recessive or you're dominant. It says here that
How old is it on?
If you can, it's a dominant trait. If you cannot, it's a recessive trait. Okay, next one, polydactylism. I don't need to pull up pictures for this one. Okay, guys. If you were born with more than 5 fingers or toes on either hand or feet, you possess a dominant trait for polydactyl, is what that one means. Any of you who went to Abbey Middle and know who Mr. Beck is, not only were his toes webbed, he had a bonus 6th toe on his right foot. I saw where they cut it off. Oh, he had it removed when he was a baby. You would know if you have an extra finger or toe. There would be scarring if as a baby you had it removed. So if you are dominant. If you have 5 fingers and toes, you were born with 5 fingers and toes on each appendage, that's recessive. Syndactyl is what I said before with the webbing. If you have webbed fingers or toes, this is a dominant trait. And again, you would know. By 15, 16 years old, you would know that your feet are different than other kids' feet. The webbing fingers or webbed toes is a dominant trait.
Wait, so people have like fingers that are like
I will Google a picture for you. Here's a picture. That's not a picture, that's my children and my mother. Come on! Go over here and go there. There are degrees of webbing. Some of the webbing will look like the fingers have grown together, and some of them will just look like you're a duck.
Oh, no.
You would know. It would be very obvious. If there is any doubt in your mind, you don't have it. I'll say it that way. If you're like, I don't know if my fingers are webbed, the answer is no. You would know. Okay, the cleft chin. I'm going to pull up my Facebook page for this one because I am real good friends. Yeah, but we're not talking about that. I will show you what we're talking about here. My friend would be horrified if she knows that I'm putting this picture on Facebook, or this Facebook picture on my class's TV. You know what? I might even text her and tell her I'm doing this. Okay, so this is my friend, Emily. The girl on the left is the mother in this picture is a friend of mine. Take a look at her chin.
Yeah, you're gonna have to zoom in for that.
Yeah.
Oh, she's going to hate this even more. Zooming in on my family photo on Facebook. They are a good-looking family. No, I can't zoom in. Oh, there's the comments? Here, let's do this. Yeah, they recently, well, not recently. They have a kid same age as Jack. So that picture is 2 years old. She is not abundantly active on Facebook. Let's find a better family picture. No. Come on, Emily. Put more pictures on Facebook. Okay, so here is her and her husband, just the two of them. This is a particular trait that is wildly aggressive in her family. This is my buddy Jesse. His chin looks like a chin. She would tell you, her chin looks like a butt, is what she says. When we're talking about cleft chins, that dimple right there is what we're talking about. And every single one of her kids aggressively has that trait. The genes in her family have basically wiped out my buddy Jesse's. All her kids look so much like her, it's not even funny. So that is what a cleft chin is. And again, you would know if you had this thing. Anybody? Kind of. It's faint. It would be right in the middle here. Yeah, you have that, Massey, you do? Absolutely. Massey absolutely does. Yeah, Johnny's got one too. And the traits can be more or less pronounced depending on who you are, depending on the rest of your genetic code. It's just hilarious to me Oh, and to most of our friends, how overpowered her genes are compared to her husband's. And the hair whorl. Okay. Let's look at this one. The hair whorl. And again, if you've got long hair or styled hair right now, it's going to be hard to see this. But it's which way your hair is growing out of your head. So one person, this particular picture, swirls this way, this particular swirls that way. These have. How do you know what? You only define where it's coming out of your head. You parted your hair.
Oh, how do you
Part. Your hair grows out.
Hold on.
How do you feel about messing with your hair? Okay, then I want you to put all your hair forward and flip it back.
Clockwise or
Pull it forward and then roll that and flip it back. Okay. There we go. So it looks like this is where your hair, this is the base of all your hair growth.
No, everybody.
It looks like it curls.
But it depends on the person.
Looks like you have a clockwise hair roll. The longer your hair, the harder it is to tell. Yours looks counterclockwise. Again, the longer your hair is, and then we got Muller. Muller's hair is like the perfect length for this. Yeah, your hair looks like it comes out clockwise.
Yeah.
Okay. So. So allegedly, these are traits that are controlled by, oh, where's my mouse? There it is. No, I don't want that. Go here. Yeah. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Oh, sorry. This is an interesting one to talk about the hair whorl. Because I have said before that I've said it a bunch of times at this point already, we are going to oversimplify how this gets played out. And this hair whorl trait is an example of this. So the way that this is worded here, what it's suggested here, is that a clockwise whorl is a quote-unquote dominant trait. A counterclockwise whorl is a quote-unquote recessive trait. But studies have shown that there's more than one gene that is responsible for putting together what your hair does as it comes out of your head. And I'll read to you something here. Even though counterclockwise seems to be, what does it say here? A clockwise whorl is a dominant trait, is what it says here. But all we know is that we do know that clockwise whorls are more common than counterclockwise whorls. But we do also know that it's more complicated than just saying it's an individual gene. That's okay. We're going to oversimplify this. This is an example of an oversimplification, but we're just going to go for it. If you're able to tell, a clockwise whorl we'll call a dominant trait, counterclockwise whorl we'll call it a recessive trait, just because the clockwise is the more common one globally. And now you should have a list of dominant traits versus recessive traits in this. And now we're going to start to oversimplify things further. Sorry? Yes, okay. So we're going to come back to this. The second column we'll come back to in a sec. There's a whole paper here on the myth of the hair whorl. If you're interested, I can show it to you. What's going on here? I don't need that. Okay, flip the page. Here we go. Mendel and his pea plants. We'll come back to the genotype stuff in a little bit. Okay. Mendel and his pea plants. So, Gregor Mendel is the guy that we're talking about here. Gregor Mendel was a monk who also started studying genetics. Now, part of the problem with what Gregor Mendel did is we look at what he does and the results that he came up with. They're like, this is really fascinating. Let's generalize his results and start talking about how individual genes work out. But with Mendel, this was a very, and like lots of genetic experiments of the same kind, when you do a genetic experiment like this in lab settings, lots of things are very controlled as they should be in the lab, but what that does is it artificially kind of influences what you see in the world of genetics. And I'll try and demonstrate what I mean by that. So, pea plants. So like peas, the vegetable, the plants that grow those vegetables have an interesting ability. They have an ability to what's called self-fertilize. So what that means is if there aren't, so at this stage, I'm hoping you guys are at least a little bit familiar with how plants reproduce. We're aware of the fact that most plants need to be pollinated. So what that means is you have insects usually, but it's not always insects. Sometimes it's bats too, for example. You'll have an organism that feeds off the nectar of a particular plant, and when it shows up to feed, it gets pollen on it, and then it goes to another flower and feeds on that flower. And then the pollen that it picked up on flower A gets dropped off into flower B, and now you've got pollination happening, and that is effectively how flowers, sperm from one meets egg of another, through the use of bees, butterflies, wasps, bats. There are countries where people get paid to do that by hand. There are countries where the pollution has wiped out the bee population. So the primary example is China. There are sections of China that depend so heavily on agriculture and they don't have a bee population, but you've got literally millions of people. Everyone needs a job. There are people that get paid to take a Q-tip out and they go to one flower and then they go to the next flower and then they go to another flower and then they go to another flower. And their job, their career, is to pollinate flowers because the bees are gone. Pea plants are interesting. Pea plants, they can do that, and in a perfect world they would do that, but pea plants can also self-fertilize. So the same flower, all flowers have male and female sections to the flower, which you should learn about in grade 9. Some of you did, some of you didn't. Pea plants, within a singular flower, the male parts can access the female parts and self-fertilize. It's sexual reproduction within a single organism. It's weird, but they can do this. And what Mendel recognized, and Mendel is the blank here, Mendel noticed that when purple plants, so plants with purple flowers, when they self-fertilized, they produced only purple offspring. He also noticed the same thing with white plants. When the white plants self-fertilized, they only produced white flowered offspring. Emmanuel, wake up. Emmanuel, wake up. Someone wake up Emmanuel. Plants that reproduce with predictable results like this are what are called true breeding plants. And this makes them useful for all sorts of different kinds of genetic experiments. Mendel was a monk, but he was also a scientist, and he decided to experiment on these pea plants. What he did is he bred true breeding purple plants with true breeding white plants. You would do what I was describing before. You take the pollen from one and you give it to the other. The pollen is effectively sperm. Pollen is plant sperm. They don't get pollen for the transformation of honey. They're going for nectar. They want the nectar, and they have to brush past the pollen to get it. No, listen to what I'm saying. They don't want the pollen, they want the nectar. So the bees are like, I want to eat the nectar within that flower. Nectar is just the lure that plants use to bring in pollinators. They're like, I have this sugary, tasty thing. Come eat it. And by the way, when you're here, we're just going to paint you with some pollen. And then the bee's like, oh yeah, I took the nectar here. Now the nectar's gone. The flower needs time to produce more nectar. But that flower over there has some nectar no one's been to yet. So I'm going to go get a drink over here. And when it goes over there, the pollen that it picked up on its fur, because the bees are furry or hairy, the pollen that is picked up on its hair in the first plant falls off into the second plant. The pollen is a byproduct. Bees are not out to get pollen. Bees are out to get nectar, and then they get back to the hive. Here's where it gets gross. They get back to the hive, and then they vomit up the nectar, and that is what gets turned into honey. So no, you're not. Honey is not bee sperm. Honey is bee vomit. It's wildly healthy. It's fantastically healthy. But think about how weird so many things are. Who's the first person to walk up to a cow and be like, I'm going to grab this and drink whatever comes out? Right? So, but you don't need to teach a baby cow to do that. They will. So, yes, effectively, when you're eating honey, what you're eating is bee vomit. The pollen is the byproduct. The pollen is what fertilizer. They're not collecting pollen. I don't know. Who told it to you? They make honey from the nectar. Now I'm second guessing myself. As the nectar is passed from bee to bee, it turns into honey. It's nectar, not pollen. Your elementary school teacher was wrong. I am right.
Bro.
If Google can be believed, I am correct. Okay. And, I should say, I learned this from reading books to my son. So, because it had been a while since I looked into, he loves bees. We were reading a book on bees. So, there we go. So, Mendel said, I'm going to take these true breeding purple plants, I'm going to breed them with the white plants. So he gets in there with his little cotton swab, and then he goes over to the other flower with the cotton swab, and then he goes back again, and he's like, okay, what is going to result? The other beauty with pea plants is they reproduce fast. They are not a slow-growing plant. They're a relatively quick-growing plant. So what color do you think the offspring were? What are the options? Oh, come on. One was purple, the other was white. What are the options? Okay, light purple is an option. Maybe the white just kind of muted the purple. Okay, what are some other options? White and purple multicolored. White and purple together. Oh, what about just white? That's an option. Also an option. Well, it wouldn't be darker than, by definition, when we said light purple, it's just a muted version of the purple that showed up. So these are the options, and this is what we're going to talk about over the next little bit here. These are different kinds of genetic responses to different traits. If you bred purple and white and got purple, it means that purple was dominant on the white and covered over it. If you get white, if you breed purple and white and get white, it means that white is the dominant trait and is going to cover over. If they blend and give you light purple, that is a trait that we call, I don't want to screw this up because I'm going to teach it to you properly next week. I want to say it's incomplete dominance, where you get the blending. I could have this next part backwards. And if you get white and purple together, if they show up both strongly, we call that codominance. I might have just switched incomplete with codominance. I'll know more when I get deeper into the notes. I know, that's okay. We'll talk about it in more detail after we breed some dragons. So, here's what actually happened. All of the offspring is the word that goes there, not the band, the children. Yeah? Because they bred whole sections together. They called the first generation, well, they're called the first generation. They are the first gen plants. I know it's earth-shattering, called F1. Like Formula One. These F1 plants came out all purple, is the result that we actually saw. There was 4 possibilities. This is what happened. So what this means is purple was dominant on white. The white disappeared. What happened to the white flower trait? Oh, that's right. That wasn't the question that I was posing to you. That was a question that we could all ask together, and I'm going to tell you what happened. In the interest of time, Evelyn, you want to try and answer the question? Okay, Evelyn, answer the question. What happened to the white? Okay, so let's draw a picture of what's happening here.
Just like how, like the eye color, just like X, 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 Y is X, X can be stronger sometimes, whereas X, Y can be the one that appears more. Is that like the thing where, like, say, like, you're born like a boy and look a lot?
No. Do not, okay, here's what. Do not extend what we're talking about here to people. It does not extend. No, I'm not even playing that game. We're not playing with stay as germ, because it doesn't, because I'm recording everything that's going on YouTube. What happens in the classroom goes on the internet. Okay? We're not playing that game. And that is the danger. On the very first day of this unit, I said, it is very dangerous to oversimplify what we're going to talk about here, because it's led to some of the greatest human tragedies the world has ever seen. The Holocaust and slavery. Among other things, like eugenics and not letting people breed because they have particular traits. It has, in the past, it has been said, oh, cool, you look like that, you can't have kids. And not just you're not allowed to have kids, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to chemically sterilize you. So you are physically impossible, it's physically impossible for you to have kids. It's been done on large scales in our species. Do not overextend the concepts I'm going to show you to people. People, like, complex organisms are complex. Plants are a lot more simple. There's a reason why plants are plants and animals are animals, and you've got higher forms of life than others. Pea plants, dolphins, not on the same page. Nope. So here are the options, right? Like we had purple plants look like this. The sperm and egg both purple in a purple plant. Self-fertilizing purple plant. Sperm and egg in a white plant, both white. if purple's the dominant one, that means that when these guys bred, this guy carried the code for purple. Breeding with a white flower, though, this one carried the code for white. So that means in an organism where purple and white show up together, the dominant physical expression was purple, but the white code is still there. It doesn't disappear, it just gets ignored because this one's louder. What do you mean?
Well, you said like the white pollen, the equal pollen.
Yes, you may go to the bathroom. I think that's what that. Oh, you should.
But like, how do you make a white purple flower?
You don't. It just happens. Like, what do you mean?
Like, well, like the pollen switch, right? You said that.
No, the pollen from one goes to the flower of the other.
Okay, and then it's just like it's a purple and white flower.
Yeah. Oh no, it's purple flower. It's a purple. It's a purely purple flower, but the underlying code, the nucleotides, the genes underneath, just because the purple is what's being expressed physically, doesn't mean that it's not there. Just like in all of the guys, in the biological males in this classroom, they've got an X gene and they've got a Y gene. The X gene is present, but the Y has taken over and been like, no, you're a dude, because I said so. That doesn't mean that the female portion of the genetic code is gone. It's there. And it expresses itself in certain ways. Like, if you go off and you take psychology, if I've taught psychology, I talk about the endocrine system. In the endocrine system is the system in your body that controls hormones. Typically, we're like, boys produce testosterone, girls produce estrogen. But that's not true. Girls produce estrogen mostly and testosterone. You have to have it. Testosterone is important for men and women. Guys produce testosterone, but they also produce estrogen. It's there. And so just because a guy's a guy and genetically and a girl's a girl genetically doesn't mean that the other half of the code isn't there. And it doesn't, and there are certain traits that are common to both. For example, the production of different hormones. You both produce, biological men and women both produce testosterone, they both produce estrogen, just in different quantities, and it affects the body differently. But it's both still there. Upper.
Well, if the pollen from like white flower, like it goes into purple flower, does the purple
Same result.
Flower, like does the purple flower, like that flower, does that turn into the blue flower?
No, it would then. So when a flower gets pollinated, that's when it turns into a fruit. So if you ever look at a fruit tree, you go out into the world like, oh, that's an apple tree. Look at it's covered in flowers. The only flowers that will actually give you apples are the flowers that have been pollinated. When a flower gets successfully pollinated, it will start to germinate and it produces a fruit. Then that fruit is functionally, the fruit contains seeds. Apples have seeds in the core. You take those seeds, you plant them in the ground, and now you have those seeds contain the genetic code of the pollen and the flower that was on the tree that then became the apple that you now put in the ground. We don't let that happen because we eat the thing and we throw the seeds away. Also, apple trees take frickin' forever to grow. But pea plants are fast. You can plant a pea in the ground, grow the plant, pick a pea, plant that, and have it grow and produce fruit in the same season. Peas are fast. Fruit trees take decades, which is why we didn't do this with apples and oranges. We did this with pea plants. Hogger, does that answer your question? Yes, if you don't know how plants turn into fruit and then turn into new plants, I can see how this would be confusing. Coffin. Okay.
How does like obviously they're the same, the two different colors come together. Is this like
Maybe.
like the way that like comes together?
I am going to say the short answer is I don't know because I don't know what that specific flower like. So and this is why I say don't generalize because every single one. There's a reason why he picked true breeding, self-fertilizing pea plants specifically. Because just because that's the way one plant reproduces doesn't mean it's the same way that this other plant reproduces. So we're talking about cows for an example. We're talking about how you can breed a black cow with a white cow and get a black and white cow. Both traits are expressed in equal measure. So that's what you're talking about. I have this purple, and it's not a dusty purple flower. It's a purple and white flower. Both traits are expressed there completely. That's where I was trying to remember before whether it's codominance or I'm pretty sure it's codominance. They are both there in their full power, sharing space. Where incomplete dominance would say, I'm here too, we talk together, we're now light pink or whatever. So that's what I was talking about, where you're like, I forgot it already. You shouldn't have, because the answer to the question you just asked was what I was talking about. So what he discovered is that when purple and white showed up, purple was dominant, but the code for white still had to be there. So then these plants were allowed to self-fertilize. He isolated them and said, okay, cool, you can self-fertilize. Let's let your genetic code, your own genetic code, crank out more offspring without mixing the two. Because he wanted to see what the genetic expression would be if they were now recontained. And here's what he saw. In the second generation, F2, what he noticed was that the white trait, underline this word, reappeared. It showed up again. Even though he had purple flowers self-fertilizing, white came back, which is weird. Not a result that perhaps was expected, along with some purple plants. So both traits showed up again. Even though all of F1 was purple, F2, white came back and purple was present. After repeating the experiment a bunch of times, he noticed a pattern. What he noticed was, in that F2 generation, when they were allowed to self-fertilize, 3 out of 4 plants would be purple. So I'm going to rewrite that as a fraction. 3/4 as a percentage. 3/4 is what? I would love nothing more than for you to be able to actually read what I'm writing. 3/4 is what is a percentage, grade 10? 75%. Which means that 1 out of every 4 plants would be white, which I'm going to write as 1/4, which I'm going to write as 25%. This is a weird result, and here's a diagram of what's happening. You have purple flower, you've got white flower. They are true breeding parents. They are allowed to breed with each other, and they make all purple offspring. It means that the purple dominated the white. White was recessive. Purple was a dominant trait. But the white is still there because when these plants were allowed to self-fertilize, they were mostly purple, but there was a case where white showed up. But it was less common. And so now he can start talking about, okay, if the purple is the more common and the white is the less common and the purple covers over the white even though the white still is there, this is where we start talking about dominance versus recessive traits. Evelyn. Say that again? If purple was the recessive trait, then purple would not have taken over here, white would have taken over here. Not necessarily. We're not talking about normal versus abnormal at this stage. We're talking about which one is the more powerful genetic code. I have 2.5 minutes. Let's go for it. Flip the page. From each of these experiments, Mendel proposed the following laws. Mendel's laws. Each plant had 2 factors that act as sets of instructions for each trait. What do we call these factors? We have another name for these 2 factors. What do we call the instructions that code for a trait? A gene. He didn't use that language yet, but he introduced the idea at this stage. He also said that each parent donates one of these factors to the offspring. And that it is possible that one factor may dominate over the other if both factors were present. Bell's going to go in 20 seconds. You can pack up. You have no homework from me. We will carry on tomorrow. Have a great day. We'll see you later.